I'd like to remind everybody, if you do speak, will you please state your name as you speak and identify yourself, because we are being recorded on YouTube. And I will move now to the roll call and the certification of the quorum. And it should be noted that Mr. Ken Parsons is absent and Paul Pennington is absent. Steve Mills, I am present. Mr. Stephen Dunstan?
Present.
Bill Green?
Present.
Mr. Mitchell Katin?
Here. Present.
Ms. Deborah Bachholm?
Here, present.
And with that, we do have a quorum. And next, I would like to get a motion and a vote on the approval of the minutes from our November 1st meeting of 2017.
I'll move that they be approved as written.
A motion by Mr. Mitchell Katin. Do I get a second?
Second.
And all approved by voting?
Aye.
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 Aye. And a unanimous vote. Approved. And next, we move to item D, which is public comment section. And we see no public here for any discussion or agenda items or wanting to address the advisory council at this time. And so with that, we'll move to item E, which is staff reports, briefing from staff and discussion from the licensing division, and licensing statistics.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Tarsha Red, licensing manager. And it's been a long time since our last meeting. And there's been some growth with the program overall. From 2010 to 2017, in 2017 we had 34 new licenses issued, 664 renewed, with a total population of 726. And in the report, you'll see there's a breakdown by the license type for the property tax consultant, the real estate consultant, and then the combined totals. And the combined totals, there were 201 new licenses issued, 1,485 renewed, and a total population of 1,748 licenses. Any questions?
I have none. Anyone else have any questions on that?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tasha. And then item E, number 2, the customer service division, introduction and overview of the customer service division and the statistics.
Good morning, board members. Thank you for being here today on this cold, rainy day. My name is Trey Seals. I'm the Director of Customer Service. We've been here all along. It's been a long relationship, actually, with the property tax consulting industry, and we have grown. So I'm here in a new item for the customer service division on the advisory board meetings. So I'm giving a quick overview of who we are and what we do, and we decided it was time for us to introduce ourselves to the advisory boards. And just to let you know that we're here in the background working really hard, but we just want to put a face to the work. So we have a team of 54 dedicated team members in the customer service division. We are the first point of contact for all of the interactions that customers will have initially, at least, with the agency. From our contact center, we're located at EOT downtown on the 6th floor. We answer phone calls, we answer emails, we help with walk-in customers at the front desk in the lobby. We respond to social media posts and questions through social media. We answer approximately 2,000 calls per day presently, with approximately 400 emails per day, and that works out to several 250 calls per hour. We had over 500,000 contacts last year. And that was before the new programs that we took on in November. So As you can see, the work flow and the work volume is rising. And we are doing our best to meet those challenges, those new challenges. One other thing we do in our contact center, we have 5 languages represented currently, and as of March 1st, we'll have 1 more. So we do, of course, take calls in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Korean, and then Thai. So a little bit about myself and a little bit about the history of the customer service division. I've been with TDLR since about August 15, 2005. And at that point, it was 13 customer service reps. We were on the first floor, and it was a really small, tight-knit group. I came over from the Cosmetology Commission, and it was that was a big year for the agency. We suddenly had over 250,000 licensees, I believe, at the time. So their call volumes just went through the roof. And I was there to help with that transition. So I've been here through much of the growth, especially since that time. So about 13 years. Let's talk a little bit about statistics. So as you can see, from the beginning of our fiscal year, which was September, many of our contacts for the property tax consultant industry are by phone, and it doesn't represent a large percentage of that 500,000, as I stated earlier, of the contacts, but we do our best to serve each and every customer, and no matter how they come through the channels that they come through to us. So as you can see, it's about 60 to 90 calls per month for the industry. And this industry, we've been here together for several years now. A lot of the details have been worked out. A lot of the questions pretty standard at this point. And we do have several subject matter experts in our division who are really good at this program. And then, of course, we rely on compliance on licensing in other divisions when we have questions beyond our scope. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. That concludes my introduction.
Trey, so
today.
you started with like 13 people. How many people you got now?
50. At this present time, we are at 50 people, and we have 1 more starting on March 1st.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're getting all your resources that you need.
We are working with what we have and doing the best that we possibly can, and looking at every option to
So that's an
improve.
ambitious maybe.
And looking at every
Yeah.
technology and everything that we can do to handle that volume.
That's a pretty robust work volume right there.
It is.
Wow, that's impressive.
So I have a few questions.
Sure.
My name is Mitchell Katine.
Okay.
Tell us your name again.
Trey Seals. Mm-hmm.
And what is your position title?
I'm the director of customer service.
Okay. How long have you been the director there?
I have been the director for 2 years now. It's 2 years.
And your department handles the entire Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations, all of the agencies that come under this?
So we are the first point of contact for all of the industries that we regulate. Yes, they
Okay.
do come through.
So when a
our
call
area.
comes in, does it go to a general operator before it comes to you, and they route it as to where it goes?
Currently the way that it works is the call comes through to an announcement. You choose your language. Right now it announces
Oh,
3,
okay.
and then it is passed on to a live operator who is either, if they know the answer to the question, will quickly answer the question. If they do not, and they'll do research to try and find the answer and consult. If they are not able to, they will establish what we call an incident in a tracking system that we are using to make sure that we get that over to a subject matter expert, wherever that person may be, to get the question answered.
How many operators are there?
50, at this point, 50.
Not with your department.
Oh, okay.
How many operators are there to answer the phones?
So 50 for the 800 number and the local number. That is all that we have at this time.
There are 50 operators
That is
ready
correct.
to answer the calls?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So if I were to call the 800 number, there would be 50 potential people
Potential
that would
people,
answer the
correct.
phone?
We also, just to break down the work and what we do have a large volume of email, as well as is the second highest category for our work. So not everyone will be on the phone ready to take the call, because they actually kind of tie together. If you send an email, you don't get the answer to the email, you then call. So it is a constant balancing act to address the current queue and the number of folks waiting to speak to someone and getting those responses to those emails that have already come in. You have a little bit more time with email. Phone is definitely the primary.
Well, actually,
focus.
that's the reason for my question.
Sure.
Is sometimes for state agencies, you call and it rings and rings, or you can't get anybody. And
Yes.
I actually have never tried to call here, and
Yes.
the people I can email and they respond. But
Mm-hmm.
if I was calling as a member of the public or a licensee, I just was wondering if people are frustrated or they can get somebody and they get a response. And do you all respond to emails within 24 hours, or what's your response time?
That is our goal. At this time, we have experienced a raise in, or an increase in the volume since the addition of the 6 new programs in November. So we are in the moment strategizing of how to absorb that additional work and get our service levels back to where we want them to be. So it's definitely one of the challenges of operating a call center.
So when someone calls or emails,
Yes.
you have that employee keep some type of log or record what agency they're calling about?
Yes, we
Is
do.
that how you get
We-
these statistics?
We do. That is correct. And that is from a wrap-up. At the end or during the call, you have the opportunity, okay, what kind of call is this? And you tag it, and then you complete the call, or you do it right at the end of your phone call for each
Okay,
call.
so it's real-time record keeping.
Correct. It's automated. It's part of the software.
Okay.
It gives you a pop-up and a drop-down, and you click the industry for which the call
Interesting.
came through.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Yes, sir.
William Green, I'll speak to, I recently called in 2
Yes.
weeks ago on
Yes.
my license, and
Yes.
it went straight in, waited about, not a minute,
Okay.
and I think I entered my license number in.
Okay.
It took me to a property tax specialist,
Okay.
and she answered my question, and we were done. So it was pretty quick.
Thank you for that feedback.
Mary Winston, TDLR. Normally I jump in here and make Trey brag on himself a little bit more and his team because, very self-deprecating. They do a lot of work and they do it great. And even with him saying that they're trying to get back to that 24-hour response period, their response time typically is much better than a typical response time. There's no hanging on hold, and if there is, he's on it. He's on the situation.
Yeah.
If the software needs tweaking, if we need new software, it's a fantastic team and system to watch work. But actually, Mr. Green, you gave the best example of how this can work when it's working great, and fantastic.
Thank you.
Do we have a internal IT department?
We do.
We do.
So software and glitches and improvements are all done in-house?
We handle in-house, we have what's called an IT governance committee that seeks out to find, you can put in a request if you're having a systemic problem that you think you need a software upgrade or something's not being handled. That team is made up of the directors and different members of our IT staff. And those things are determined what we need. Of course, we operate within the budget that we have for that kind of thing. And Trey's one of these innovative people. He's a techie kind of person, and so he has his thumb on the latest technology. IT governance may or may not think that's the greatest technology, but it goes through the ringer, and it's a constant thing. We've gotten several new programs, and it's been a constant growth. So we continue to grow with it IT-wise. And, yeah, we do. That's a constant thing. It's not just complaints, it's not just the different, you're saying agencies, we typically say programs, but it's IT, it's customer service, every aspect that we can think
So
of.
there's a director, IT director?
Yes. Oh, we may, have her come to speak as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
All right, great.
Anyone else? Trey, thank you very much for your time and the information. You got a lot to put your arms around, for sure. And I probably, voluntarily or involuntarily delete 400 emails a week. Probably mostly involuntarily. Next is Section E, Item 3, Enforcement Division and Enforcement Statistics.
Good morning, members.
Morning.
My name is Jessica Hurtado, and I'm the prosecutor, enforcement prosecutor assigned to this board. Before I get into the statistics for this report, I wanted to go back to your last meeting and address a question that was raised about the statistics that were reported to you. If you'll recall, at your last meeting, you had 7 agreed orders that were brought, and there was a question about the time frame in which those were done, whether that was from 2009 or from 2013. And so I did go back and clarify that that's from 2013. So just wanted to give you an update on that. And then currently, for fiscal year 2018, as you can see, we've had 5 cases opened, so that's averaging approximately 1 a month. You can see that's pretty on track with last year. We had 10 opened, so seems like it's going to be pretty much steady with that so far. Of those 5 cases, 1 has been assigned to a prosecutor to review. 1 is currently opened for an investigator. 2 were closed at intake, and 1 has been closed for insufficient evidence. And so that concludes my report. Unless there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Yes?
I'm Mitchell Katine. Can you give us an example of what common complaints are that you investigate and or prosecute, just so we have an idea of what y'all are doing?
That is a good question. I don't actually work these complaints. They're usually assigned to another attorney, so I'm not as familiar with what the common allegations are, but I can
And
certainly...
Jessica, right behind you, we have.
Charlotte Melder, I'm a senior prosecutor with the Enforcement Division, and I do work these cases. We don't actually get a lot of these cases, but it's usually somebody represented somebody without notice, or somebody continued representing somebody when they weren't supposed to, or they didn't show up, or they weren't giving the proper information to the client, that sort of thing.
Is it typically, this is Steve Mills, is it typically a taxpayer that turns them in, or that files a complaint, or the appraisal district?
The majority of the time, yes. The appraisal district will turn in someone for unlicensed activity. That's what we see mostly from them.
So this brings up actually something that I discussed. I can't recall if I discussed this with you, Mary, last time. And I don't know if this is a sensitive issue with everybody here or not, but it's something that concerns me, and I just wanted to bring it up because this is exactly the type of thing that I wanted to discuss and see if we might want to address. And that is, when a citizen hires a property tax consultant to assist them on their property taxes, that engagement, I guess the idea is that engagement lasts forever, literally forever. It does not? Well, how long does it last? If I hire someone to be my property tax consultant, do they ever have to come back to me again and say, do you still want me to protest your taxes in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
This is Deborah Balcom. It's going to totally depend on your contract with your particular consultant. Some agreements will be continuous until someone says stop. Others will be for a limited term or a limited activity. Maybe you're only hired to do one specific activity, like file a rendition, maybe. Or maybe you're only hired to file an exemption form, or maybe you're only hired to do a protest to the ARB for 1 year. Maybe you're only hired to go to a binding arbitration hearing or something like that. So it's totally going to be dependent on the contract that you agree with your consulting firm or consultant that you're
This is Bill
contracting
Green.
with.
There's also a agent authorization form that we have to get signed by the taxpayer.
Right.
And it has a date the authority ends.
Is that promulgated by us? Is that a promulgated?
It's
form?
promulgated by this Deborah again, by its comptroller.
Promulgates the form.
It's legally, it's in our rules in the legislature, in the property tax code, that we have to have this form filed with the appraisal district.
This is Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel. You'll find that information in the tax code in section 1.111, which will discuss basically the letter of agency that you would file with the appraisal district, what the requirements are, and things about duration and all that.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much. So with regards to these enforcement actions, if someone represents somebody without this proper authorization, that would be a violation and subject to a complaint.
That's correct.
Or if they continue to represent someone after it should have terminated, that would be a similar complaint.
Yes. And another thing that we see is somebody continues to represent them when they shouldn't have, and then it ends up that the person loses out on some of their rights because they'll go and then the deadlines have passed and then, it becomes a problem, especially if the property tax consultant didn't appear.
Okay.
And this is Steve Mills. For further clarification, the appraisal district is not supposed to discuss that with an agent without that form on file. So they bear a little bit.
So they need to make sure it's there.
Yep.
And this is Bill Green again. Steve Dunson can probably speak to this better than me. We do it a lot, but there's also a revocation of agent form that we have to
Yep.
file.
Yeah,
So
so-
they can file it or we can file it,
They meaning the
the
citizen?
taxpayer.
Taxpayer?
So they can revoke our ability to represent them, or we can revoke. And we do that. When we do that, we have a certain amount of time to let them know and notice them.
Yeah, and this is Stephen Dunson. The issue I see a lot of times is we'll have a contract in place which may or may not have an expiration date, but the taxpayer will go and hire another consultant, and we're never told about it. And so we'll show up and do the work because we've got a valid contract in place. And it's, according to us, our appointment of agent form is still valid, but some other consultants turned in another appointment of agent form, and the taxpayers never notified us. They didn't cancel their agreement with us in writing, like's required, and we'll show up and do the work and then send them a bill, and then you got a competing
You have a
difference there.
conflict because these other people are doing work too, and they
Right.
want to get their consideration. So how can we resolve that issue?
I don't know how you do it. It's usually handled internally between consultants, because you have a contract in place, but your appointment of agent form is expired, and many times you've done the work.
And I think
And
the
so we just-
revocation
Yeah,
has done some of that.
right. So also, whenever a client notifies us in writing if they want to revoke our agency, there's a law passed in the legislature a couple of years ago which says you must revoke it and send them a copy of the revocation form that the comptroller prescribes via certified mail or some proof of delivery to them. But again, the problem has always been, that I've experienced, has been the lack of communication from the taxpayer to us, telling us, hey, we've hired somebody else.
Well, on behalf of the taxpayers, these things come up for a short period of time in a year, and you kind of forget who you hired and that type of thing.
Right.
So I'm just, this is all great information, and one of the reasons taxpayers hire y'all is because they're busy and doing other things, and they
Sure.
forget, and that type of thing. So, very good. This is all.
This is Stephen Nelson. Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
You said that the appraisal districts sometimes will file a complaint on somebody that has unauthorized, or they're not registered.
They're
with
not
TD.
licensed, right.
So we experienced last year in Harris County where we would show up, and prior to even being able to walk past the front door, they were checking our authorization forms and verifying it. And my problem with that is that I don't know if the appraisal districts have the ability or the authority to institute any type of fines or prohibitions against a licensed consultant, whether or not the database may be updated or not. Have you run into that problem where maybe the database isn't updated online as quick as what?
No,
They have-
our database is updated immediately.
Okay.
So there should be no lag that I know of. I'm constantly assured that it's updated it's real time. If it is an issue and they're not that I know of allowed, that we don't issue fines through them. It would come to us, but they can file a complaint. So if they're checking and a person shows up and they don't have a license, that would be the impetus for them to file a complaint with us. We would investigate and go forward with it. But I don't know of anything that says they can't ask for current license.
Right. Well, I don't have a problem with them asking. I just
Yeah.
have a problem with them trying to enforce some type of made-up policy. And then, in another incident I had last year, another appraisal district, I sat down with an appraiser, and she asked me, was my license valid? And I said, yes, it is. But by the way, is your license valid as well? And she didn't like that question, and she immediately went up and got her supervisor, and I said, if you're going to ask me, I'm going to ask you. And her license was valid, but it struck her as odd that somebody would dare to ask the same exact question to her. And we resolved it through her supervisor, but it was interesting, because I don't know what I would have done if her license wasn't valid. I don't know what,
File a complaint.
yeah. So I just want that to be out there. It is, I mean, just because they can ask us, we can also ask them.
Anyone else have any questions? No. Well, the enforcement division is vitally important because, I mean, that's the whole reason that we have this in place. And it looks like it's alive and well, and we appreciate y'all's efforts and time in answering our questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica and Charlotte. Next is item E, number 4, Education Examination Division. With division updates, education examination, school services, personnel updates, and statistics.
Good morning, Chairman and Board. My name is Lorraine Srofe, and I am with the Education and Examination Division. In our report, we provided some personnel updates for you to review. We also provided the exam pass and fail statistics for you, as well as the continuing education courses. And on the report, you'll also see that the Examination Review Committee did meet on November 30th to review the items in the bank, and they did make some updates, as well as the reference of the 2017 Property Tax Code, which will become effective March 1st. So I just wanted to be sure that you all were aware of that. And the next Examination Review Committee is scheduled to meet in fall of 2019. As you look through those statistics or the report, if you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them for you.
Deborah Balkum missed the date you said when it's going to be reviewed again.
In fall 2019. We don't have an exact date set yet, but that is when it's scheduled.
Lorraine, who from our advisory board was on the committee?
Paul.
Paul?
Penny.
Yeah.
That is correct. There were 6 members who were actually on the committee to help review the exam questions.
We certainly appreciate Paul attending to that.
Yes, Mitchell.
Hi, Mitchell Katine, and I really appreciate the commissioners giving me leeway to learn about everything. It's really
Absolutely, sure.
helpful for
Absolutely,
me.
yeah.
I just have a question. I see here
Sure.
it appears there are 3 different types of licenses: property tax consultant, property tax consultant senior, and property tax consultant attorney.
Correct.
Those are actually 3 separate licenses?
It's
Different? They're different?
well, it actually has to do with the requirements to obtain a license, like for their pre-license education requirements. That's where that difference comes in, because an attorney, the requirements are a little different from someone who is except that meets requirements. So there's the same component.
What's senior? Just curious. Is that
Senior,
based on age of the person?
We are all
Never.
seniors.
This Deborah.
See this right here?
This Deborah Bauckham. So really, there's 2 property tax consulting licenses. There's a regular property tax consultant license that after 40 hours of education and passing the entry-level exam, you can have
Correct.
your regular property tax consulting license. But in order to operate as a property tax consultant, you must be under a senior, so it's kind of like an apprenticeship program. And so you have to be under a senior and registered and affiliated with a senior property tax consultant. To be a senior property tax consultant, you have to have 5 out of 7 years of your primary practice being consulting, and you have to pass an additional exam. You have to show
Correct.
so many credits of education or so many credits of continued education or background in property tax. Once you have a senior license, you can operate by yourself, or you can employ other consultants under you, or work with other seniors. Then
Like a broker and.
kind of like a broker,
Okay.
yes, just like
Okay.
that kind of relationship, exactly. Then the provision came in several years ago that would allow an attorney, if you're a licensed attorney in the state of Texas, you could take the senior property tax consulting exam and then employ property tax consultants under you,
That is
without
correct.
you necessarily carrying a property tax consulting license yourself, since you're an attorney. And so.
It's kind of a supervisory.
Yeah, again, but we wanted the attorneys to make sure that they had the knowledge and capacity of property tax consulting before they started employing consultants under them.
So, because I do real estate law generally, but I
Okay.
tell people I don't do this.
Right.
If I wanted to do this, if I wanted to go to hearings, which I've been to before personally,
Right.
I would need a license to do that, a separate license than my law license? Is
No.
that correct?
No.
Do
So
you have the
attorneys-
real estate broker license?
I do not.
Okay, because we do have the option for the brokers to come in
Real
and,
property license. Just doing
to
real
obtain a license as well. And that pre-license requirement is not quite as much. They have to have the 4 hours in legislative law issues and Texas laws and rules to be able to obtain that license.
So this is more if I wanted to employ property tax consultants to do this as like a business?
Right.
But I would imagine if I, as a lawyer, wanted to go and represent someone at a contested hearing to try to get their property taxes reduced, I could do that without a license from,
Correct. As an attorney, you could
I
represent
could
them.
do that in that
That is
business.
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
But a regular person could not. Like,
Right.
you'd have to be an attorney to do
Right,
that.
but I couldn't employ a non-lawyer to do this in as a business.
Unless you've
without-
passed
I
the
did
senior
that.
exam, correct.
Gotcha. Did you say there was another one, a fourth one?
There's, actually, it's the fourth one, it's the real, what she's talking about, there's a
The
real
real estate,
property.
okay.
If
Yeah.
If you're a real estate, or I think even an appraiser.
Um,
A realtor, I know for sure, because I have it. but,
Yes, it's the broker, and I really
you
don't
take
like
the
going by memory,
4-hour
but
course, and you're eligible to represent real property owners only. No
Correct.
real property, but real property.
correct.
And but there's not many of those. I don't think there's many
There's-
people doing that.
Yeah,
If you look
I-
at the renewal rates on those, I don't see a whole lot.
Yeah,
left.
it's a small percentage.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Lorraine, one quick question.
Sure.
This is great information. Has there ever been any discussions with other tax organizations, like, for example, the IPT, Institute of Properties Professionals
Yes.
Taxation? In Tennessee, it's a reciprocal. If you're CMI, that you get the licensing for Tennessee. And I believe there's some other states as well that are kind of in that process as well. Has there ever been any discussions with IPT for reciprocal education requirements or for licensing for Texas?
I'm not aware of any discussion around that. I believe there would have to be an agreement made between the states, and there may possibly have to be some statute changes as well. Of course, we have our lawyer here that may be able to address a little bit more of that.
This is Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel. There is a rule regarding reciprocity, rule number 66.23.
Okay.
Yeah,
What did you say it was, Mark?
66.23.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the information. And with that, we'll move to item E, number 5, Compliance Division, Public Outreach.
Good morning. I'm Russell Tolley, one of the program specialists in the compliance division. I handle the PTC program as well as some of the other smaller programs like polygraph examiners, auctioneers. There's about 7 of them. So I don't have any meaningful report to give you today other than to introduce myself, let you know that compliance division typically handles outreach programs. So if there is a industry meeting, a trade group meeting or something and you'd like a representative from TDLR, you would normally contact me and I could either go myself or organize some response from TDLR to have a presence there for you. Property tax specialists, program specialists such as myself, generally handle questions that get elevated from customer service or do special projects. You have to hand it to customer service. They handle almost all the calls. I rarely get a PTC call question, but if you ever have a question that involves policy or programs or procedures, I'm welcome to respond to those. So,
Russell, Steve Mills here. Quick question: Do you also function for the appraisal district group, the property tax professional group?
I do.
You do.
I do.
Anyone have any questions?
Well, I got a question. This is Stephen Dunson. I'd mentioned before, when property tax consultants became licensed or required to be licensed in the state of Texas, all the appraisal districts had signage put up inside of there saying, if you're a property tax consultant, you must be licensed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if there's any way we can have a similar type posting in appraisal districts advising taxpayers that the property tax professionals that they're dealing with are also licensed through TDLR. Would that be something your division would handle, or would that be some other division?
I could work with that, but generally it would go through our GC. I'm not sure if that would require a statutory change. Sometimes the notice requirements in offices are required by statute, sometimes by rule. In either case, the general counsel's office would be involved with that. It would be unusual in my experience to have one program proposed to a different program about their signage requirements, but that would be something you would take up with the Property Tax Professionals Advisory Committee.
Okay. I know it's, because you can still walk into some of these appraisal districts, and I can tell you the date we were required to be licensed, it was back in 1992,
Mm-hmm.
because they still had the signage up and it says effective that date. So
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't know if that was a issue that you guys could address or not, because on all our contracts, we're required to put, we're licensed by TDLR and
Mm-hmm.
provide the contact information and so forth. And I don't know if the property tax professionals are required to do something
I
like that
don't
or not.
recall off the top of my head, but I do not believe there's
I don't
any
believe it,
notice
yeah.
requirements for the
Okay.
Property Tax Professionals Program.
Certainly seems discriminatory in one side of it. That's my personal.
I have a question as well. So this is Deborah Balcom. I have a question as well. I've known several consultants who are attempting to apply for their senior consulting license, and there's lots of requirements and that you have to kind of check off to make sure you're going to qualify. We've had some trouble getting consistent answers on whether or not we qualify to apply for that senior license in those cases. Would that be something that we could escalate to your office to find out kind of definitive answers of, would this person qualify to apply for a senior consulting license prior to, going through all the different processes? Because it's kind of a niche area that not necessarily everyone understands, I think.
Sure, I'd be happy to address those questions.
Okay.
And honestly, I'd have to go to our education and examinations people and consult with them
Okay.
just to make sure I was giving you the proper answer. But
Okay.
yeah, sure.
Okay.
My email address is on my report, and you can feel free to send me any emails like that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Russell. You thought you can get off easy, but not so much. Next is item E6, Executive Office, Legislative Updates, Bill Implementation Overview and Timeline, Strategic Planning Update, and Recent Developments.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I'm Nick Voinas, Chief of Staff, TDLR. Here to bring you our Executive Office report, kind of a summary of what is happening around the agency. I want to thank you for being here today, and thank you for your service to the state of Texas. As you'll remember, the last time we met, our staff had been busy implementing legislation that was passed over the last two regular sessions of the Texas legislature. The process continues. As we develop and review rules, we communicate stakeholders, appoint and prep advisory boards, and hire additional staff, as well as deal with education, exams, IT programs, and more. Majority of this work has been completed, but this is a process that will continue as we implement programs this year and next. This spring, we will take on our strategic planning exercise to improve the way we regulate our programs. This is something that the legislature mandates state agencies do every 2 years, and it's something that we take very seriously. 2 years ago, we identified 58 strategic initiatives to address during last year's legislative session, and we are proud to report that 56 of them passed and were signed into law. We'll be going through this important process again this spring, as I mentioned, and you'll be hearing more about that real soon. Also like to update you on our website. TDLR.texas.gov is our chief tool to communicate with our stakeholders and the public. And I wanted to share with you some recent web traffic numbers associated with this program. Over the past 6 months, the Property Tax Consultant's website had 9,649 page views. That's an average of 52 a day. And if you're wondering how those people are accessing the site, 71% do so from a desktop computer, while 25% do it from a smartphone, and another 4% from the tablet. And the top reasons for visiting the site, number one, pre-license education list, followed by frequently asked questions, examination information, forms, and laws and rules. This does not include online licensing. Social media, in addition to our web presence, wanted to kind of mention to, again, to promote our social media accounts. We have a presence on Facebook and Twitter, so please check us out to keep up with TDLR events and activities. We also have more than 5,000 subscribers that receive our various property tax consultants program email blasts on topics ranging from education, exams, forums, meetings, events, and other notices. So if you're not receiving those notices and would like to, please subscribe on tdlr.texas.gov. Finally, I want to brag on our staff a bit. Our staff's known for its generosity, and this was confirmed again this month at the State Employee Charitable Campaigns Awards ceremony, where TDLR was awarded the highest per capita gift for an agency between 301 and 500 employees. So what this means is our staff contributed more per person to the 2017 campaign than any other agency in our size group, and we're real proud of that accomplishment. And appreciate your time, and be glad to answer any questions.
Nick, I got one question. The on our site for the advisory council, it shows our term expirations. How often is that updated?
It was just updated.
Yes. With new terms, with
Yeah.
new appointments, it's updated in as real time as we can get.
Okay.
So, yes.
One other question, Nick. Is there anything set for sunset review at all within TDLR? Any particular?
Brian, take this one.
I saw him walk in, that's why I brought it up.
I think he's
Had to make him sit down.
Board members, how you doing? Brian Francis, Executive Director with TDLR. Sorry about my tardiness, but my dance calendar was pretty full this morning, and I was stepping on a lot of toes, so I'll just continue to do that. So sunset, did you talk about strategic planning process?
Yes.
Okay, great. So out of our last cycle for strategic planning, you'll recall that there was an item that recommended the possibility of transferring the property tax consultant program to the Texas Real Estate Commission.
Mm-hmm.
The Texas Real Estate Commission is now undergoing sunset this cycle, and in their self-evaluation report, they've included a recommendation to have the property tax consultant program as well as the property tax professional program from TDLR transferred over there. We've not been engaged by the Sunset Commission, but I anticipate probably in the next month or so, there'll be a conversation where they'll ask us, what does that look like? How can that be accomplished? So I would say that there are definitely some conversations afoot in regard to transferring the program. As many of you know, a good portion and percentage of property tax consultants in Texas are also real estate brokers, so there is a nexus there. A lot of the educational requirements that are in our statute allow for the education, the continuing education, and those sort of things from the Real Estate Commission side of it to be accepted, so there is a connection there. A little history, and Mr. Katine may recall this in his days of being on the Texas Real Estate Commission as a commissioner. Prior to joining TDLR, there was a bill passed that would have split TDLR in part and moved all the pieces somewhere else. And in that recommendation, in that bill, it had the property tax consultant program going to the Real Estate Commission. So this is not the first time that that conversation has taken place.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And thanks for letting me give you a hard time. Next, we'll go to item F, the discussion and possible recommendation, including discussion of possible rule amendments to 16 TAC Chapter 66 and a possible appointment of a work group. Do anyone have any opinion or thoughts on actually having a rule workshop or create a work group?
Well, can someone explain what the actual subject of this is a little more? As far as 16 TAC Chapter 66, what's that about?
Probably Mark could, more than anybody else.
Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel. Currently, the program is in what we call Phase 2 rule review, which basically means that an in-depth review of the rules, the administrative rules that govern PTCs needs to be completed. So we need to kind of take a little bit deeper dive into the rules. There's not that many rules that we have currently, but I do believe that it would be incumbent upon us to take a very good close look at these rules, and certainly a work group consisting of some of the members here would be quite helpful to staff in determining what rules may need to be modified and what rules do not.
Do we have these rules on the laptop here? Because I see you've included Chapter 51. Is Chapter 66 in here too?
Mary Winston, Mr. Katine, I would like to apologize for that. It says Chapter 66. I think it's supposed to say 60.
66, yes.
Is that in the packet?
Should be in the packet.
Is that the right chapter?
That is the right chapter.
And is that the chapter that applies to tax property consultants?
Yes.
Is that why it's there? Okay.
And we can, in the future, we, as lawyers, probably get a little rule-heavy as far as the numbers, so I'll apologize for that, and we can just put it in plain language and say what we're talking about. I see some smiles and nods.
Okay, so I guess this is the chapter that has the rules that regulate this industry,
Yes.
correct?
Now, if you wanted to see the rules, since apparently they didn't make it into the packet, if you wanted to see the rules, they are on our website.
Okay, so this is Mitchell Katine. So this is something that came up at our last meeting about looking at the rules and seeing if we had any suggestions or changes or ideas. And so I guess something that my thought, Mr. Chairman, is that we each look at the rules and see, and then maybe report to the, if this is appropriate procedure, report to the staff those rules that want to come up for discussion at our next advisory committee meeting. Would that be okay? I mean, we just read through the rules and then those things that we think need to be addressed, we
Mary
can put them on.
Winston, TDLR. Sorry to interrupt you,
That's
Mr.
all right.
Kateen. We're going to do something this is how we normally do this. And our presiding officer would, if you'll see here, it says possible appointment of a work group. So instead of taxing everyone with just individually at your leisure, we try to want to do it more systematically. So the presiding officer would appoint a work group, which is less than a quorum. And that work group would take that initial deep dive, and the work group would come back with a report to the full body of the committee to then discuss what they saw. Now, of course, anyone individually can review on their own. We just don't want to run into any violations of quorum, but that's typically how it's handled. I'm thinking you would be interested in participating in that work group.
Well, I think it would be interesting. I may have more questions than the average person because it's new to me.
Perfect.
But my thought is that you all could email whoever that work group is, Chapter 66, that we
Well,
could read through it.
How
and-
it would go typically,
Okay.
staff would contact members of that appointed work group, and we would set up a time to meet. Doesn't have to be in person. It can be over the phone. We can use the smart board. Technology, we love to use it when we can. But we would accomplish that by staff member contacting the work group that's been appointed by our presiding officer. They would get together and discuss them together, which means they would have a copy of the rules. We can send it to you, you can look it up, what have you, and you can go over it however you want, point by point, line by line, and come up with a report and findings, and bring those findings back to the full body, and you would discuss it from there.
Okay. So I would like to make a motion that you appoint a work group to review the rules and then submit any items for discussion or possible attention to the advisory board at the next meeting.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
So a motion by Mr. Catan and a second by Mr. Stephen Dunson to establish a work group, which I totally support. Have a vote?
Aye.
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 So do we have any volunteers?
I'll volunteer.
Okay. Mr. Catan? I'll certainly volunteer as well.
I'll volunteer as well as Deborah Balcom.
And Deborah Baucom. So we will have a work group. The only thing that I would probably prefer is that we do it together in person. We can do it in Austin, we can do it in Houston, we can do it in Fort Worth, wherever, but opposed to, I think we get more done in person and knock it out in one day, if possible.
Where do you live?
I'm local. I'm here in Austin.
You're in Austin and
I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Dallas.
Yeah.
Where do you?
I'm in Houston.
I don't care. I can come to Houston. I have an
Is
office
Houston
there.
okay?
I'll be happy to come to Houston,
all
yeah.
right? Oh, wow, we can
our-
come to my office.
This sounds wonderful. Typically, we try to accommodate because we don't want, you don't get paid, and we so much appreciate your service. As our boss walked up, he said, "We'll drive up." So wherever you guys decide, staff will meet you there.
Wow.
for
Well,
this
I will
discussion.
volunteer my office in Houston.
We'll drive up
Okay.
or down
Or down.
or over.
So, so
Okay.
we will have it at Mitchell's office, date yet to be determined. We'll discuss that and see what fits everybody's
Right.
schedule.
And so I guess just the idea is that we would have an opportunity to review things and have items to discuss and with our group when we get together.
Yep. I can just tell you that probably not May, June, July, and probably,
April.
yeah,
Not April.
it's probably going to be
August,
maybe
September.
Labor Day.
Yeah, September.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably
It's just the nature
earliest, yeah.
of our industry.
So I guess my question would be, from a scheduling perspective, let's say we all had a recommendation to change a rule, and we then brought it back to the full advisory committee, and then everybody agreed, yeah, that makes sense, let's propose changing that rule. What would the time frame be or schedule for, if we met in September, let's say, if the work group met in September? Would that, when do rules typically get changed, or does it really matter? Maybe there is no, maybe it doesn't matter.
Well, generally speaking, if the work group came back with a recommendation to change a rule or rules, bring it back to, this committee to let them know what the recommendations were. Then staff could start working on the modification to whatever rules that needed to be done. There is a process that we go through internally to review these rules and make sure that they meet with the proper requirements both inside the agency and complying with state law. And then we would, once we get the various approvals internally, then we could publish the rule. Under the Administrative Procedures Act, once you publish, you've got 6 months in order to get that rule adopted by the commission. We would go through a process where it would come back to you to get approval. Once we made the changes to the rules, it would come back to you to get approval, and this board would recommend those changes before we publish, and then once we came back, we would discuss any kind of comments that we received from the public, and then you would make a recommendation to the commission to adopt these rules, and then we'd have a commission meeting in which the commission would adopt those rules.
So that could happen at any time. There's not any window that we have to fit it within.
Well, we do need to finish this rule review by next April. I mean, we don't want to.
Okay.
We don't want to necessarily dawdle them.
So April of 2019. Okay, that gives me a time frame.
Right.
All right.
And Mr. Chairman, Brian Francis, if I can add a few more things. When we go through this summer with spring and summer with strategic planning, we're going to have some other comments coming out of those discussions from the property tax consultant industry that will say, this rule is horrible, this rule is wonderful, you need to make these changes. We'll also have some information about the timing of when Sunset may move forward with its recommendation. So this work group is going to have a lot more information available to it than just today. We will have the full benefit of the external focus group sessions, the surveys that we've conducted. So we will also be able to bring to the work group and say, by the way, here are all the comments we received dealing with property tax consultants in regard to rules. Here are the existing rules. And by the way, here's the recommendation that Sunset may be making towards your industry. And I think all that coming together will allow for a more informed process as we go forward. So
And
just wanted to add that.
Brian, I have a question, Stepper Balcom. In our last meeting, I think somebody mentioned that there were some comments made in 2015 that I don't know if they've ever been addressed or thought about, but could we make sure that those are brought to the table as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
That we-
they will be addressed.
Okay, good.
And another thing, I was just informed that you do have a copy of Chapter 66 in your PDF. It's in the rear.
Yeah.
I believe starts at page 69.
Okay.
And with that, I'd also encourage anyone that's in our industry that is licensed into our program, if you have any comments on rules that are obstructive or onerous or problematic, I guess, please send those in, and we'll look at those as well and see if there are actually issues with those rules that are in place. Not that they'll be changed, but they could be, modified or whatever. But we certainly want to hear from everyone, particularly those that are under the property tax consultants licensing regulation.
And, Mr. Mills, sorry, Mary Winston again. And when we say send them in, if you want, since whoever would do that would be watching this meeting, they could send it to advisory.boards@tdlr.texas.gov.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your comments on that. And Mitchell, thanks for offering your office for the work group. And with that, we'll move to item G, which is discussion and possible recommendation, including discussion of possible amendments to the penalty matrix for the property tax consultants and possible appointment of a work group. We had a little bit of discussion on that in the last, if the penalties that were in place, if they were strong enough, if they were too strong, and is there any discussion that anyone would entertain around the penalties that are in place?
Mary Winston again. This is another example, Mr. Katim, and members of the committee, of how we utilize your expertise and you work with the staff. During the last meeting, it was kind of brought up. It wasn't on the agenda. to really address the penalty matrix. However, our enforcement division, you've heard from a couple of members of that division today, the director, Christina Kaiser, and her team, which Charlotte Melder is a senior member, put this together. There's a whole process by which they do it, but they don't do it alone. They do it with the input from the advisory council. We know what's black and white. We know what the law says. You guys know what happens in the real world. What is this really more of an administrative penalty? Is this something serious? Is this something you see? We take that input, and this is what the enforcement division uses to create a penalty matrix. To do that, we begin with a work group. So right here it says possible appointment of a work group. This would be another work group that would work with the enforcement body to take a look at the penalty matrix and reassess it, reevaluate it, make sure it's still on point, that sort of thing.
And with that, is there any interest amongst the council?
I'll do it.
Okay, so would you like to make a motion to establish a work group?
Oh, this is Stephen Dunson. I'd make a motion to establish a work group to review the penalty matrix for property tax consultants.
And is there a second? Second. And a second by Mr. Green. And can I get a vote on the appointment of a property tax consultants penalty matrix work group?
Aye.
Aye? Aye. So we have 2 volunteers, I guess.
You might want to volunteer some of the people that aren't here also.
I think
That's a great idea.
I think that's called voluntold.
Okay, so we have member Mr. Bill Green, and by his absence, Mr. Paul Pennington has been appointed to that work group, and Mr. Stephen Dunston, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, the date will be determined?
It will be determined. Someone from enforcement will contact you, and we'll kind of get it together, and they'll explain the process. They'll take the lead on this one, explaining that process and beginning the process.
Perfect. I appreciate you guys doing that. I think it's very important. I think I actually brought it up last time, and I really appreciate y'all attending to that. There's nothing else on that. Item H, recommendations for agenda items for the next council meeting. I would like to establish if it's going to probably be in the fall, most likely, a joint session with the property tax professional group and our group.
Well, actually, I understand there was just a little oversight. If you actually read the minutes, it says that that was to be an agenda item today, and I understand it was just, there was some miscommunication among the staff members.
So, Mary Winston, I'm going to explain that a little bit. So when we discuss, let's have this. We should have this discussion. We should have this summit. We should do this in the fall. So what is this, everyone? What is this? Does that mean we put it on the agenda in the fall? Not what we meant. We meant that we would probably better have this at that time. So it didn't get on the agenda this time, but our presiding officer is handling it. So, and it looks like we're still on the same page with after the busy season for this profession. So we will let you continue.
Perfect. So really, we all want this, correct?
Yes.
And
Correct.
so the fall, probably October, hopefully we can, maybe in the next agenda item, say October, if that's agreeable to everyone. And we can get the dark side to agree to do it in October. We will have a joint work session with the property tax professionals group.
But do we need an agenda item for the next meeting on that?
We can put it on the agenda. We have sort of discussed it. Internally, we can plan summits where we see fit and the profession sees fit. So we don't know yet when the next meeting will be. But behind the scenes, as I always compare Trey's team to a duck on the water, and you see this duck doing this, and then under the water is this. So staff will be doing this.
This Deborah Bachner, have the PTPs or the property tax professionals shown interest in meeting with us?
I'm not aware of
Do you
that
know?
interest, but I will reach out. And there's been no adversity, and no one has called anyone from the dark side. So we're just going to retrain that thinking right now. And by October, we're all going to be singing "Kumbaya."
Yeah.
Again,
One of these
staff
days.
will be doing this.
Okay.
So hopefully that work session will come after the next meeting or before the next meeting? Or it will be an agenda item on the next meeting?
We can have it as agenda item
Okay,
on the next
great.
meeting. We will be busy paddling
Yeah.
internally
Okay.
and making contact with PTP.
Okay.
And because, again, October would probably be a great date based on the professions that we're talking about.
Mhm.
But everybody has scheduling conflicts. So as quickly as we can get that on the schedule, we'd like to do that. I know that may seem odd because it's February, but trust me, it's really not. So we're going to be working to get that and trying to kind of confirm schedules behind the scene.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much. And is there any other items that we need to put on the agenda for the next meeting, other than this joint work session? I mean, obviously, we'll probably have the rules discussion.
I have a question. I guess I wanted to talk a little further about what Mr. Francis said about the Texas real estate considering what they're considering with this organization. And my only question is it appropriate for this advisory council to play a role in that and/or consider that and/or recommend it or not recommend it? Or is there something we should be doing while they're considering that or do we just let them do it without any input from us?
That's a great point and great question.
Like maybe lobby against it?
If that's, I don't know your feelings. I mean, we
Well, that
haven't
would be my
discussed
feeling.
it. And
But
so,
I'm a real estate broker.
We did
Okay.
not use that ugly word in here.
what word is that?
Lobby.
Oh, okay. So anyways, for us to just stay quiet and let them do this and then make a recommendation that may affect the people here doesn't make sense to me.
This is Bill Green. Brian, and I know you remember this, but I remember back when they did this before. And I don't know, this was after Bill, I think Bill had already come over from the track. And he was the commissioner of track, right?
That's correct.
But for whatever the reason, it didn't go very far. And I can't imagine that it would again. I mean, I'm sure Sunset's going to review it, but what do you really think? I mean, and then to follow that question, if they did, let's say it did happen, when would that actually be implemented?
Okay. So great questions. I will start in the order of my preference.
Okay.
My order of my preference is that as an agency, we can't even lobby for it, so the advisory board would not be in a position to have something come before you and say, we agree with it or not. So you'll never see anything on your agenda saying, we vote to support it or not, because we couldn't do it, our commission could not do that at the policy level. The sunset process is geared to take in input. And so right now, the Sunset Commission, if you go to their webpage, they literally have a section that says, Texas Real Estate Commission undergoing sunset, here's their self-evaluation report. Public, do you have comments that you want to share on this? And that's where you would expect the participants in this industry and other interested folks to say, we love it, we don't love it, but that is the vehicle through which those comments need to go through, because Sunset Commission staff is now gathering the information that they will make a proposal to the Sunset Commission, maybe somewhere in, around September or August. So there is time now to engage and plug into that process. Could it happen? It could. It really could. I think there is a mood in this legislature to consolidate like parts and pieces. I think TDLR's success in having other things consolidated within us is saying, wow, maybe we can do some more of that somewhere else. So there's a possibility. We've just gone through, and I know Nick may have touched on it, with the 13 programs from the Department of State Health Services, taking on the medical podiatrist this last session. That gives the legislature some confidence that consolidation may be a path that's appropriate. It's going to be them to decide that does it fit over there, does it work over there, and will they have similar success? But I think it's going to be explored, and I think, Bill, the probability for success is greater today than it was back then.
What do you mean by success?
The success of that happening or not.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
the probability of
Of consolidation happening today
consolidating it over there.
is greater than it was before. And the truth of that statement is also, in 2003, there was discussion about moving 8 programs to TDLR, manufactured housing, cosmetology, barber, and all those programs. It didn't happen, and I'm grateful that it didn't happen in 2003 because we weren't ready for it. But now when you get to 2015, you get to 2013, 2011, and 2009, we were ready to take those things on. We weren't in 03. I think the environment may be ready to take on these type of consolidations as opposed to where it was before, so.
So if approved, we're talking probably 2020, because of the 19.
It would be a bill introduced, if it was going to go forward in this next legislative session in 2019.
Okay.
And then from there, let's say it moves through and you guys are at the hearings and you're doing all the things that you want either way. If that bill passed and was signed into law, it could have an effective date as early as September 1 of 2019. Or they could decide, like we have done in some cases, give us a year for transitioning and make it September 1, 2020. So that would be in the logistics and the transition language. But I think there are other discussions that will have to take place well before that.
Mitchell, this is Steve Bills here. I can tell you, having been in this industry since 3rd grade, they might be a stretch, but we're not really known, our industry and the profession is not really known for standing by and let things idly happen to them. And, I mean, Deborah Bauckham can speak to this, because she's been in leadership. Mr. Dunson's been in leadership at high levels and been very active. And we just don't let things happen to us or to taxpayers. And I think, my personal view is, I think in the Real Estate Council, there's probably some conflicts, great conflicts, sales price disclosure, all kinds of things that would probably would be detrimental to property owners in a lot of ways. So,
Well, that's what I wanted to know, because I don't know the feeling
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
whether you all were for that or against it, and what the underlying thing is, and I actually don't know. I hear what you're saying. I don't know that we need to go into that here.
Right.
But.
And there's no intention to do that.
Right.
But I'm just telling you,
Okay.
we're probably not just going to sit around and go, well, dang it. Wish that wouldn't happen.
Bill Green, this is Bill Green. I do want to say, though, since we've only been under TDLR, it's done nothing but get better and better and
Yeah,
better.
absolutely.
And,
Appreciate it.
I mean, it really, it's because I'm also a realtor, but it's been a great experience, and going from not being licensed to being under TDLR, and because you see, PTP, the Property Tax Professionals, are also under Board of Tax Professional Examiners. See, so there's a lot of dynamics there, and they're just now kind of getting used to being under TDLR, so there's a lot of dynamics.
Sure.
Mr. Francis, are there public hearings by the Sunset where
There
people
will
can
be.
come and testify or give their opinion?
Absolutely. Again, they're in the information gathering stage. The first cycle is the agency does a really deep dive look into its processes, its rules, and that sort of thing. And then from that self-evaluation report, the Sunset Commission staff will start soliciting information from the different folks that are impacted. In the self-evaluation report, you actually list the different associations and groups that the Sunset Commission staff should consult in this process. And then they'll have some public hearings, and then they'll have a decision meeting. So there's a lot of contact that's out there.
Okay, so we are still on item H. So the Property Tax Professional Work Group is agenda item. The review of the review rules workshop work group will be on that. Is there any other items that need to be discussed at this point? Okay, with that, let's move to item A, and that's discussion of the date, time, and location of our next council meeting.
Do we want to have that after the work groups meet? So if we're going to
Yes.
meet in September sometime after that?
Yep. So I'm going to say sometime in October. And
Mr. Chairman, our staff can contact you guys individually here in the future to go ahead and schedule.
okay. Okay.
How those reports are going.
And I would venture to say probably anytime after October 20th, or 25th, we're probably not good for a number of reasons.
So before
Say
then.
that again?
So,
Before-
yeah, before October 25th.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Makes more sense.
And with that, item J is adjournment. I may have a motion to adjourn our meeting and close our meeting today
So
of the Property
moved.
Tax Advisory Council. A motion by Deborah Bockham. I get a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Bill Green, and we will close the session.